Justice was served today when Jared Ramos was sentenced to 5 life without parole sentences for the murders of the 5 at the Capital Gazette. They're all consecutive sentences to each other, plus an additional life sentence for the attempted murder of Paul Gillespie, plus 25 years for each of the surviving victims, plus another 20 years for each of those surviving victims. I am so grateful for the remarks of all of the survivors and the family members today in the courtroom. That's incredible bravery. The bravery to stand up in front of somebody who killed their loved ones or tried to kill them and say what they said today in court. It was just amazing to me. As was the bravery of the first responders in this case. You know, people run from danger. The first responders in this case ran into those offices that day. And the satisfaction of being able to bring this for the community of Annapolis is just amazing to me. And I appreciate the support of the community and the victims and the witnesses in this case and the jurors. We actually had jurors come to court today to see what would happen. And I think it became very clear that this case was not about the defendant being right, that he was somehow wronged by the Capital Gazette, but that he exploited his lawsuit and his losing of the lawsuit and killed innocent people just to feel better about himself. And the jury saw through that, and the judge saw through it today, sentencing him to the maximum sentence possible under law. Take any questions now. Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that you asked the judge to make it clear what his intentions were today, and just curious as to why you felt that was important in case this sentence were at some point in the future to be reconsidered or something like that. What was going through your mind as to that?
Well, in Maryland, life without parole means life without parole, but I don't know what will happen someday down the line with a case or the legislature if there's an opportunity to revisit. And so I wanted to have the judge make clear what his intentions were, and the judge was crystal clear that Jared Ramos should never be allowed to walk out of prison ever.
You made mention in the courtroom about how he was not, he no remorse, no nothing. Can you walk us through those comments and why you felt the need to really expound on that this morning in court?
So one of the ways that sentencing is done is a judge has to decide, is this person dangerous to the community? What do they feel about the crime? Do they have any remorse? And he had no remorse. In fact, we used the defense's own opening statement and closing argument against them. And throughout this trial, it was clear that he enjoyed killing the victims and he regretted not being able to kill more of the victims. And so that alone is reason why these life without parole sentences were most appropriate.
What did you take away from the 10 or so people who you heard talk about how the crime impacted them, whether it's themselves being targeted or
I think all of us have gone through some kind of pain in our lives, but until you are standing up in court describing what it's like to be the spouse of a murdered person or the child of a murdered person, you don't really know what grief is. And I think we saw what grief is. I've met all of the victims and survivors many times and family members. I've read many of their written impact statements, but when you hear it delivered in court and you hear the pain and the anguish, and also you see that they are resilient, they are living, they're going on and living their lives, and that's their legacy, not that a person tried to destroy the newspaper and destroy people. The resilience of these family members and the survivors is just amazing.
Can you tell us something about how this helps bring closure? You mentioned that you've spoken to many of the relatives and survivors. What can you say about, what have they told you about that?
Well, there are a few of the spouses and other family members who could not bring themselves to come to court until today, but then they got up and spoke. They could not sit through this trial, but they found the strength to talk in court and address the judge today. So that's amazing. I think a lot of these folks have been on a journey of healing, and this day is really going to hopefully be the next chapter for most of them. They can move on.
Did you hear any of their reactions? Did you speak to them after the judge delivered the sentence?
Yes, I did. Again, Rob Hyacinth's family have been so strong. Wendy Winters' family has been so strong to come here and stand up and speak on behalf of their loved ones. It is an empowering thing to do. I think Mr. Hyacinth's sister said, you know, the least that she could do, if he went through this, if he was murdered, the least that she could do was stand up and talk about him in that courtroom. So it's just extremely powerful. And I think when you have the ability to come to court and to talk about your loss and the loss of your loved one, it is the most empowering feeling. And the defendant didn't have the power. They had the power in the courtroom today.
The judge said in about 30 days there will be an opportunity to appeal, and then you mentioned a bunch of other timestamps, 90 days and so forth. Can you go over that for us?
Sure. So within 30 days, if a defendant wishes to appeal, they have to file a written notice with the court of their intent to appeal. If they wish to have a modification of sentence considered either in the short term or the long term, they must preserve that right within 90 days. So after 30 days, if none is filed, then you can believe that no appeal will be filed in this case. And I think the defendant has made mention that he may not wish to appeal.
Can you help us understand also, the judge said after each count, sentence to each count consecutive. That means each count is going to be served one after another and
Right.
not all together.
Right. So the very first count, I believe, was the murder of Wendy Winters. That was life without parole, and each and every count that followed was consecutive to the one before it. So there is no mistaking what the judge's intention was today.
Your message to Mr. Ramos while you were making your arguments about how wrong he was, would you mind going through all the mistakes he made and figuring out what this case would be like?
Well, you know, the defendant wanted to have the last word, and the reason that he committed this attack is not because of what people did or didn't do in 2011 or 2013. He did it because he lost his appeal in 2015, and he could not live with that. He wanted to have the last word. He engaged in lawsuits from 2013, 2012 to 2015. He was in multiple lawsuits. He was making the most money of his life in 2013 and 2014. He had a full-time security job. He wasn't threatening anybody during that time other than litigation and saying weird stuff on Twitter. So I think it was important for him to know and hear in the courtroom how wrong he was. He was wrong about Gerald Fishman. You know, he tried to justify murdering Gerald Fishman as if Gerald Fishman was arrogant for having that sign Gerald Time on the wall. He was wrong about that. Mr. Fishman wasn't arrogant. It was a joke that his co-workers said because Mr. Fishman was always early for everything. So even the reason that he told Dr. Patel of why he killed Gerald Fishman was wrong, because he was so focused on his own beliefs and his own ego and his own feelings. He even got that wrong. And fortunately, he got so many things wrong that instead of 30 or 40 people being victims that day, we had 5. It could have been even more tragic than it already is.
You mentioned how he wanted to have the last word. Was there a part of you that was concerned at all or kind of worried that he might address the courtroom at the end?
You know, he thought he had the last word as he left the courtroom. He tried to stare me down. But that didn't work either, because I looked right back at him. He did not have the last word. The judge had the last word. The community had the last word. All of us here have the last word. He thinks that he won. He didn't win. He hurt people, but he did not win.
There was a total of how many counts? Was it 23?
23 counts.
How many years is that?
5 life without parole sentences, 1 life sentence, and 345 years. Well, I said 125 for the first degree assaults plus 220. So math was not my strongest subject, but I think I did get to 345.
What kind of message does a sentence like that send to the public?
Well, I think in order for us to get a sentence like that, unfortunately, people do not plead guilty to and accept life without parole sentences. That's the kind of sentence that you get after a trial. And it was the most serious sentence that you can get in the state of Maryland, and that's what he got.
We assume you spoke with the families since the sentencing. What have they said to you about that?
There is a sense of relief. There is a sense of pride in being able to stand up and get through a victim impact statement. I think this is going to be healing for them. There are people who've traveled from Florida, from Ohio, from all over the United States just to be here, to stand up for their loved one. because they knew it was so important, because nobody else could speak for them today, because they're not here. I don't know exactly, but I would guess Western Correctional Institute or Roxbury Correctional Institute. North Branch, even more serious. North Branch, 23-hour-a-day lockdown. The maximum. He's going to be at one of those two, either Western Correctional or, why do I keep forgetting? North Branch, which is right next door. So those are the two places in Cumberland.